Welcome to Sports Saturdays presented by 1108 Sports Network. I'm your host, Owen White, and today we are at Southfield High School for the Arts and Technology, and I'm here with the great coach, Perry Watson.
Appreciate it.
You always say there's a difference between a team and a program. What is the difference between the two?
That's a great question because we've always had great teams, and you always build toward a great team, but you should always, as a coach, have an eye to the future and always develop your young players, and I think that's what really distinguished us because our program lasted for 11, 12 years in terms of excellence.
All right. At Southwestern High, you won 9 city championships and 2 state championships. As a college coach, you won 2 conference championships and 2 regular season championships. What is your definition of a champion?
I think a champion can be defined by the fact that you accomplish all your goals and you do it with the integrity of the way the game should be played. Because I never let my guys determine success by the scoreboard. Because a lot of times you might win the game, but you didn't really play the game the right way. And if you do that, then you're not going to be crushed by maybe an early season defeat or mid-season defeat, because you see the goal that's at the end of the tunnel. And I think that's what champions do. They take the floor every day in practice. They take the floor every day in games, knowing that what their goal is to be the best player and best team that they could be.
All right. In 1991, you decided to become an assistant coach at University of Michigan. After your Southwestern Prospectors team won the state championship, and they were the #1 team in the nation. What led to your decision to take the position at U of M?
I had always considered myself a trailblazer. I figured that, the blessings I got to be able to coach so many great players and great teams, and I looked at behind me, which I think is always important, and I thought that if I did not take that next step to go to a University of Michigan, then what would the young coaches that follow behind me aspire for? We had won every championship possible. Like you said, we had won city championships, we won state championships, and we won the national championship. So if I continued to stay in high school, all we could do was duplicate what had already been accomplished. But if I went to new frontiers and went to the university level, I could probably impact more people, and namely more athletes, because I could open up doors that maybe they had been overlooked. They never had been recruited by a Big Ten school, preferably a University of Michigan. So I felt that was something that was my calling, was to take that challenge and move up to the next level.
Coach Watson, several of the players you coached were very popular. Sometimes popularity can boost the ego. How did you teach athletes to be humble?
That was difficult because, again, when you're coaching 14 to 18-year-olds, a lot of time what drives you to be successful or to be great, you have to really be self-centered. You have to put in more work and more time than anybody else. And so to do that, you have to be a little selfish in your thinking. So it was important for me as the coach to make sure that they valued their teammates. We kept everybody involved. And I think it was a natural progression for them to accept all of that with humbleness, because I think that again, it was an example that I set. I never ran around, beat my chest, and said that we were the best ever. So I think, when you're a coach or you're an adult that have young people under your charge, you definitely should model the behavior that you want them to become.
Who are some of your mentors and influencers in life?
Well, I came up in the late 60s, mid-60s, and my heroes were not necessarily athletes. That was something that came natural. I loved sports from the time I was a little kid, sleeping with my basketball, dribbling it down the street. So I like to say that I looked a little deeper into my community. I listened to people like Malcolm X. I followed Huey P. Newton, and I understood that their promise was to make our community a better place to live. And so those are my heroes earlier. But as basketball, when I became a senior, I was a pretty good player, so I got exposed to a number of the Pistons. At that time, the Pistons played downtown at Cobo Hall, and it's ironic that they're in town now. So I got to know Dave Bing. I got to know Jimmy Walker, who was actually Jalen Rose's father. I didn't know it when that time came. So I always immersed myself in athletics and playing great players. And then I did the same thing in baseball, because not like now, most of us played multiple sports. And I was an all-city, all-state player in baseball and basketball.
When you played basketball at Eastern Michigan, one of your teammates was George the Iceman Gervin. He went to the NBA and became one of the greatest players to play the game. What was your experience playing with the Iceman?
That's a very good question. Iceman was a freshman, and we kind of knew he was super talented, but we actually called him Twiggy back then because he was so thin. So we tried to make sure that he understood the work ethic, the competition that he had to bring every day, because we all knew he was going to be a great player. And to his credit, we're still great friends today.
When you hear the words Detroit basketball, you think of the Detroit Pistons. However, that cheer originated at University of Detroit when you were the coach. You were inducted in the UFD Hall of Fame. What are some of your best memories as a coach for the Titans?
Probably building the program. Going to Michigan gave me, I guess you can say, a bigger view of how important athletics was, the commitment you had to make. And those 2 years with the Fab Five was just unbelievable. To go to the championship game 2 straight years with them as freshmen, as a sophomore. So when I came to Detroit, I had a view of what I had to be as a coach, but also the commitment that my players had to make. So we started instilling confidence, and we started instilling the sense of, if not me, then who? And it was just a joy to build that program and see them go from not having been in the NCAA tournament for 20 years to going in back to back, and not only going into the NCAA tournament. Like I tell people, it's nice to be invited, but you need to win. And we went in 2 straight years, we beat historic programs. We beat UCLA, who had 6 potential future pros on their team. We beat UConn, who had won a championship. We beat St. John's, who had players that played in the NBA like Ron Artest. So it was a joy to see that. And then the next step was to show local kids that you could stay home and you can achieve an education and play and make it to the NBA. And we had 3 players from Detroit going to the NBA.
A debate has been going on over the last 10 years about compensation for students athletes. What is your position on college athletes being paid for playing sports?
I have a great interest in how that can be done. I definitely think that some type of way they should be compensated, because when scholarships first started, it was probably equal value, scholarship, education. But with the advent of big money into college athletics now, it seems like everybody's profiting except the players. And especially if the players are leaving early like they are now. So you're not even leaving with an education or a degree. So I think that people smarter than me need to make that a challenge to try and figure out, how do we make this work? Do we allow them to be paid for their images? When I was at Michigan, we probably blew the roof off the argument. I mean, Fab Five gear was marketed all over the world. You know, when they come out with black socks on, nobody wore black socks. I mean, it was like if you saw somebody on the court with black socks, you might have thought he was a nerd. But the Fab Five made it popular. Nike started selling black socks. So everybody was being compensated. we would go to different cities to play, and we would see guys wearing, and girls wearing the jerseys of the players. And again, with the guys that we had that were pretty intelligent guys, the Chris Webbers, the Jalen Rose, the Juwan Howards, them guys noticed that everybody's getting paid but us. And it's only grown since then.
Can you tell us about the lives of Curtis Jones and Coach Will Robinson?
Oh my God, two of the greats. Curtis and I actually started playing against each other at 10 years old until we graduated from high school. He was way ahead of his time. You know, most of the time players will figure that I outscored you, so I'm a better player. Curtis impacted the game and the championships with his playmaking ability and making others great. And as I look at it, and I affectionately say that Curtis was magic before magic. Just an unbelievable talent, and enjoyed competing against him and playing against him. And then when you say Will Robinson, I think all young people have to have a goal. And Will actually coached against me in high school when I was a player. He had the team that had Spencer Haywood, Ralph Simpson, and others, and they beat us in the state tournament by 3 points. So that was my first time laying eyes on Will. And then when I became a high school coach and looking at the legacy that he left and then getting to know Will, it was something that I said, that's some goals to try to achieve. Be as good as Will was or better than Will's record was, because nobody's going to be better than Will, because he was he broke barriers. I mean, the first black coach in the Detroit PSL, the first black coach in the NCAA Division I basketball, and then to go on into the pros as a scout. So he was always somebody that I followed, I watched, I sought out for counsel, and just admire him.
What advice do you have for youth about education, sports, and life?
They all are tied together. You know, it's pretty simple a lot of times. If God has given you some talent to be a player, then you need to establish a work ethic. Because if you're talented and you don't work hard, you still will get beat by a hard-working player. I think the balance that you bring to the table will determine how far you go. Because you have to be a balanced player. You have to have the passion to put in the work to be a player, but you also got to make sure you pay attention to your academics. You know, I was so proud that probably 98% of my players went from high school to some level of college basketball. So we made education a priority. Then I think the other balance you got to have in your life is the type of person you are. You know, I think it's very good when you're able to conversate with people, when you're able to ask intelligent questions, and you make it to the point where they can't close any doors because you got the whole package.
Coach Watson, congratulations on your induction to the American Basketball Hall of Fame, and I would like to thank you for letting me interview you.
Thank you, Owen.
And you've been watching Sports Saturdays presented by Learning Sports Network. I'm your host, Owen White, and please remember to like, share, and subscribe.